Hello, my name is Roman Dindihashvili, and this is the continuation of my series about world's greatest players. And today's topic is Boris Spassky. One other thing I wanted to mention about his opening exploration. I remember there was a match played in my hometown of Tbilisi, match for World Championship candidates between two true geniuses, Boris Spassky and Mikhail Tal. Here is Tal, at that point was known as one of the greatest tactical player, and the other one is Spassky, which was Spassky, was also a great tactical player, but he had good defensive skills as well. And that's when today we have Marshall Gambit in Ruy Lopez played on the highest levels. But believe it or not, that's when, in the match of Spassky and Tal, where Spassky continuously played Marshall Gambit. That's when Marshall attack in Ruy Lopez was reincarnated. It was reincarnated by Spassky, and Tal couldn't win one game with white against Marshall attack, and Spassky played it in every game. Tal would go to some end games with extra pawn, but they were opposite color bishops, and he never could win any because Spassky's intuition was so deep and so flawless that he would predict that extra pawn is not good enough to win in those end games. And making a draw with the black is extremely good result. It's extremely valuable. So you take the advantage of playing white from your opponent. And that's exactly what happened when Vladimir Kramnik beat Garry Kasparov in a match, because he had another opening that was absolutely depressing for Kasparov. He played Berlin defense in Ruy Lopez, and he had same result that Kasparov couldn't win one game with white. And Kramnik, that's practically that defense won the match for Kramnik. The same thing happened many years ago between Tal and Spassky. But the difference is that Spassky came to those conclusions without help of any computer engines, because they didn't have any then. This is another indication of great talent, genius Boris Spassky. In 1970, there was a match between Soviet Union and the rest of the world. Boris Spassky was the world champion, and he was on board one, obviously, but for some unknown reason, and this is a mystery to me even today, that Bobby Fischer, who was at that time, without a doubt, the best player in the world, he didn't play on board one, and because Bent Larsen was insisting that he deserves to play on board one. And I couldn't imagine that Bobby Fischer gave in and he let him play on board one. That was great surprise for me. That's why there was 4-game match, and Boris Spassky's opponent on board one was Bent Larsen. Bent Larsen was greatest talent, and he was, as Boris Spassky was natural talent, he was inventing new points in the chess strategy. Some of them were very dubious, but a lot of top players failed to prove it, and once they failed to prove, they failed in the game. And he was having some greatest results. But to playing these dubious openings against someone like Boris Spassky was extremely dangerous idea. And here is the game that rocked the world, chess world. B3, Larsen is white. That's his favorite first move. E5, bishop b2, knight c6, c4, knight f6, knight f3, e4, knight d4, bishop c5, knight takes c6, d takes c. This is interesting. Let me tell you about this position. Of course, white has very powerful dark square bishop. Spassky, in his understanding of chess, and I know it because I have spoken to him, I know how he thought, and he believed that activity and dynamics are a lot more important factors than the static points. Statically, maybe white is okay. Dynamically, black is too active. And the same, looking at these evaluations, now when best chess programs came out, such as 𝐻𝐿𝐵𝐾 and few others, they been programmed the way based on the same principles as Spassky had. Not necessarily Spassky, a lot of top players had it. Dynamics should prevail. And this is great indication of it. This great indication. Oh, okay. Let's see what happened in the game. E3, bishop f5. Black is fully developed. White is not. Queen c2, queen e7, bishop e2, and castles long. Now, interesting. This is the difference between human and the computer. 𝐻𝐿𝐵𝐾 recommends here castling short. Well, I would never castle short because we humans evaluate direct attack on the king a lot higher than computers do. And once attack happens, of course, we are not nearly as good as computers are, but we have intuition. We can predict that by castling queenside, we have a chance to perform great attack on a king side. And that's exactly what Spassky did. He castled the queen side. F4. After this move, white's position becomes very, very dangerous. Maybe already lost. Knight g4. This move was totally unexpected for white. After knight g4, black has a threat of queen h4 check. Well, just to give you an example, on knight c3, for example, that queen h4 check, and on g3, queen h3. That's very dangerous. Plus, if knight c3, there is a possibility of bishop takes e3. But then bishop takes g4, and we get some unclear position after bishop takes d2. But main reason, of course, is queen h4 check, g3, and queen h3. White's position is very, very dangerous. So what happened in the game after knight g4? g3 was played. Understandably, Larsson just blocks possibility of queen h4 check. But after h5, there is no more defense for white. h4 is coming, and all king side will be swept away by black pieces. And again, knight c3, even h4, or maybe even knight takes e3 will be highly dangerous for white. They cannot castle either side. Natural move h3 came from Larsson. What he's trying to do, that after knight f6, then he wants to develop knight c3 and finally castle queenside. But this never happened. Game ended in like a 4 or 5 moves. After h4, here white can absolutely resign. After h4, there is no more defense. Taking on h4, of course, out of question, because it leads to total destruction. Knight on g4 must be taken. Taking with a bishop is a lot worse than taking with a pawn, because now white gets mated in a very few moves. It's a totally resignable position. So what happened is pawn takes g4, pawn takes g3. It would have been the same if bishop took on g4 without light square bishops. And after rook g1, black has luxury of ending the game 2 different ways. Move that was played by Spassky was rook h1, game that absolute killer, rook h1 move. But that's why computer is computer. Rybka suggests even better solution. Bishop takes e3. And after rook and pawn takes e3, now rook h1. This leads to total mating end. g2 and queen h4 checkmate. You see, point of bishop takes e3 was to open the d file and stop white's king to moving to d1. However, the move that was played by Spassky, rook h1, is very effective and very beautiful move. To tell you the truth, it's not very difficult move, but it's very beautiful move. Rook h1, g2, and rook h2 was out of question because queen h4 check and queen h1. So Larsson played rook f1 instead. But after queen h4, it's still a forced checkmate. Check. Bishop takes g4 check. And on bishop e2, queen h1 mate. And on king c1, queen e1. That's also a mate. This is amazing that Sometimes, if you saw this game played without knowing who was playing with white, you may say, wow, how can grandmaster of this caliber of Bent Larsen, how could he lose in 17, 18 moves? I tell you how. Well, you may say white was very weak player. No. This is the dangerous positions that Larsen likes to play. And the reason why he got crushed here is because of his F4 move in this position. This is the move that weak player would never make, but it's a critical move. Now, if white doesn't play knight g4, then black doesn't play knight g4, then white has okay position, but f4 move requires extremely precise, energetic play, and with the crushing continuation the way it was happened. It was very difficult to predict, and that's why even top players in the world, they are not immune against instant crushes like this, because they try to establish their standing points of the right after the opening, and sometimes it has devastating consequences. This game was played in 1970, and I remember for years to come, it was example of the power play in this opening. Larsen was has never played B3 opening this way. He was playing it differently, but he stopped playing it the way he played this game, first 5 moves. There were different variations and different strategies, but was never played it again. I think it's quite spectacular game. In conclusion, I have to say that every chess player, every great chess player, has something specific about it. At the same time, almost every great chess player has something in common with another great chess player. To evaluate Boris Spassky and to compare him, who could we compare him with? So I would say Capablanca. Capablanca was very flamboyant, and he loved parties and going out with several different women or just partying. Boris Spassky was the same in a way. He liked partying. He wasn't studying much chess, and he was mostly relying on his over-the-board capabilities. And they both very gifted, very talented, and I could say were both geniuses of chess.